Picture this. A parent, wealthy and powerful with a rebellious teenager across the pond. This, my friends, was Great Britain and the American colonies in the 1700s. Britain, the big kahuna, saw the colonies as a cash cow, ripe for the milking. The colonies, young and brimming with potential, craved freedom and the right to their own destiny. This difference in perspective, my dear readers, was a recipe for one epic showdown. For decades, the colonies had lived under British rule, enjoying relative autonomy and basking in the glory of the British Empire. But like all good things, this harmonious coexistence had to end. The seeds of discord were sown, ready to sprout into a revolution that would change the course of history. The stage was set for a dramatic clash of wills, fueled by taxes, tea, and a burning desire for liberty. Buckle up, folks, because we're about to dive headfirst into the story of how 13 colonies dared to challenge an empire and gave birth to a nation. Before the storm of revolution, life in the colonies was a mixed bag. Imagine vast farmlands, bustling port cities, and a society still finding its feet. The colonists, mostly farmers, merchants, and artisans, considered themselves loyal British subjects. They sipped their tea, imported from England of course, paid their taxes mostly, and sang "God Save the King" with gusto. Life wasn't always rosy. The colonists faced challenges, harsh winters, conflicts with Native American tribes, and the constant struggle to carve out a living in a new land. Yet there was a sense of optimism, a belief that they were building something special, a land of opportunity and freedom. Their ties to Britain ran deep. They followed English law, celebrated English traditions, and spoke the King's English, albeit with a charming American twang. But beneath the surface of this seemingly idyllic relationship, a current of discontent was brewing. The colonists, accustomed to managing their own affairs, bristled at the idea of being dictated to from afar. They yearned for a greater say in their own governance, a desire that would soon put them at odds with the mother country. Now let's talk taxes. Everyone's favorite subject, right? Not so much for our colonial brethren. After years of relative freedom, the British Parliament, facing a hefty debt, thanks in part to the French and Indian War, decided it was time for the colonies to pay their fair share. Enter a series of taxes, the Sugar Act, the Stamp Act, and the Townshend Acts, to name a few. These acts, intended to raise revenue for the crown, landed on the colonists like a ton of bricks. They argued that they were being taxed without representation in Parliament. No taxation without representation became their rallying cry, echoing through the streets and taverns. Imagine their outrage. It was like being asked to pay for a party you weren't invited to. The colonists protested, boycotted British goods, and even resorted to a bit of smuggling. The relationship between Britain and the colonies, once as sweet as a cup of English tea, was turning bitter. Boston, 1773, the birthplace of American independence, and let's be honest, one heck of a tea party. Tensions reached boiling point when the British East India Company, facing financial ruin, was granted a monopoly on tea sales in the colonies. This didn't sit well with the colonists, not one bit. They saw it as another blatant attempt to tax them without their consent. So, on a chilly December night, a group of colonists disguised as Native Americans boarded British ships and dumped 342 chests of tea into Boston Harbor. The Boston Tea Party, a defiant act of protest, sent shockwaves across the Atlantic. King George III and the British Parliament were furious. They responded with the Coercive Acts, closing Boston Harbor and imposing martial law. These acts, intended to punish the colonists, only fueled their anger and solidified their resolve. The Boston Tea Party wasn't just about tea. It was about principle, about the right to self-determination. It was a turning point, a catalyst that pushed the colonies closer to the brink of revolution.